For nearly 2 decades, a mysterious man robbed small-town banks across central Pennsylvania. He carried guns, stole hundreds of thousands of dollars, used stolen vehicles, and repeatedly escaped before police could catch him. But there was something very strange about this robber. He didn't wear a mask, he didn't disguise his face, and he didn't seem worried about surveillance cameras. In fact, after several robberies, he deliberately shot at them. By the time he destroyed the cameras, however, they had already captured his face. That strange habit would eventually become his signature. His first known robbery took place on March 14, 1977, at the Upper Dauphin National Bank in Halifax, Pennsylvania. At approximately 10:25 in the morning, a man entered the bank and told a teller he wanted to speak with the manager. The request seemed completely ordinary. The teller escorted him to the manager's office. Once inside, the man pulled out a bag and an automatic pistol. He ordered the manager to fill the bag with money. Together, they emptied 3 teller drawers. The robber then warned the employees not to follow him and walked out of the bank. He escaped in a 2-tone brown Oldsmobile. For years, there was no arrest. Then, on February 28, 1985, the same man appeared to strike again. This time, his target was the Upper Dauphin National Bank in Pillow. At around 1:44 p.m., he approached a teller and asked about a certificate of deposit. Then, he pulled out a gun. After taking the money, he headed for the exit. But before leaving, he fired several shots at the surveillance cameras. He escaped in an early 1980s dark blue Buick Regal and was last seen heading north toward Mandato. Investigators now had reason to believe the same robber was back. 5 years later, on April 3, 1990, he targeted Mid-Penn Bank in Dalmatia. He approached a teller carrying a canvas bag and holding a revolver. He demanded large bills and reportedly told the teller that he did not have all day. As he left, he fired 3 shots at the cameras. One camera was disabled, but the bank had another surprise waiting for him. Dye packs had been placed among the money. As the robber entered the parking lot, one exploded. Bright red dye covered the money, part of his clothing, and the rear of his vehicle. It seemed like a major opportunity for investigators, but somehow he escaped again. Later that same year, on December 18th, the robber struck Jersey Shore State Bank in Montgomery. He entered at approximately 1:38 p.m. and asked to see the manager. Once inside the manager's office, he pulled a gun. He forced the manager behind the counter and ordered the tellers onto the floor. The manager was forced to remove money from behind the teller windows. The robber then ordered the employees into the vault. He placed the cash into a briefcase. Before leaving, he fired 7 shots at the surveillance cameras. 7 shots. It was becoming a pattern. The robber knew cameras were there. He knew they were recording him. And yet, he continued to allow himself to be filmed. In 1992, he struck again. On March 26th, he entered Turbotville National Bank and asked to speak with the loan manager about a business loan. A teller escorted him into the manager's office. Then he pulled out a 9mm semi-automatic pistol. He forced the manager toward the front of the bank and ordered the tellers to fill a nylon bag with money. During the robbery, a customer walked into the bank. The customer had no idea what was happening. The robber ordered him to hit the floor. He then forced 4 tellers into the vault and took additional money. Before escaping, he shot at the surveillance cameras and sprayed a substance into the lobby that investigators believed could have been homemade tear gas. Customers in the drive-through area witnessed the robbery. Still, the robber disappeared. On November 23, 1992, he struck Commonwealth Bank in Beach Creek. This time, he went to the new accounts desk and asked to open an account. It was another harmless-looking reason to approach bank employees. Then he pulled a gun. He forced a teller to collect money from the different teller windows. The employees were then ordered into the vault and told to face the wall. Before leaving, he shot at the security cameras. By now, authorities had seen his face repeatedly, but they still didn't know who he was. Then came May 24, 1993, Campbelltown, Pennsylvania. Population, approximately 1,250. The town was so small that it didn't even have a full-time police officer. For this robber, it was an ideal target. At 1:20 p.m., a man entered Meridian Bank. Teller Deanna Gingrich remembered that it had been a slow day. When the man walked in, she didn't recognize him. He looked like an ordinary customer. He told Deanna that he wanted to open a business account. She directed him to manager Arlene Brandt. Arlene told him to wait. He sat outside her office for a few seconds. Then he walked inside and placed a briefcase on her desk. He positioned it so nobody else could see inside. Then he opened it. Inside was a 9mm handgun. He ordered Arlene to stand up and handed her a duffel bag. Fill it with money. Arlene cooperated because she feared someone would be killed if she resisted. The robber walked her at gunpoint past Deanna. Deanna was shocked and immediately began shaking with fear. The robber forced the employees into the restricted area behind the teller windows and ordered them onto the floor. Then an unsuspecting customer walked inside. His name was Don Rothermel. He had no idea a robbery was happening. He began talking to the tellers. The robber returned to the lobby, announced that it was a stick-up, and ordered Don onto the floor. At first, Don reportedly thought it might be a prank. Then the robber fired a shot into the floor next to him. When Don saw the bullet hole in the linoleum, he understood the danger. He got down. Inside the bank, Deanna was terrified. She later recalled thinking about her child and wondering whether she would survive. Meanwhile, the robber ordered Arlene to continue collecting money. Most of the bank's cash reserves were inside the vault. Arlene put much of the money into his bag. She feared that if she didn't give him enough, he would force her back into the vault. Finally, the robber prepared to leave. But first, he did what he had done before. He fired several shots at a security camera. Then, he escaped. His getaway vehicle was a blue 4-door Ford Taurus with New Jersey license plates. The vehicle had been stolen. The plates were also stolen. The number was RVP 935. Investigators determined that the same plates had been used in nearly all of his previous robberies. He was last seen heading west on Route 322 toward Hershey. Nobody was killed. Don Rothermel was later taken to the hospital after complaining of chest pains. But the robber was gone. When investigators reviewed the surveillance footage, they immediately recognized the face. It was the same man they had been looking for. By 1994, authorities estimated that he had stolen nearly $250,000. They also had a detailed description. He was believed to be around 50 years old. Descriptions of his height and weight varied, but investigators believed he was roughly 5 feet 7 inches to 6 feet tall, somewhere between 155 and 200 pounds. He had a pale complexion, bright blue eyes, and a slight limp. He was left-handed. Investigators believed his sandy brown hair might actually have been a hairpiece. Sometimes he wore a mustache. He was usually well dressed. During the Campbelltown robbery, he wore a necktie, dress pants, dress shoes, and a sweater. On other occasions, witnesses described a tan hat, raincoat, jacket, or tan three-quarter length coat with a fur collar. He appeared polite and professional, but investigators believed he carefully studied his targets and understood bank procedures. And that brought authorities back to the strangest question: why destroy the cameras? FBI Special Agent Glenn Bonchek believes shooting the cameras had become the robber's signature. But destroying a camera after your face has already been recorded doesn't erase the evidence. It simply creates another clue. Maybe he was arrogant. Maybe he believed the cameras wouldn't provide useful images. Or maybe the act had simply become part of his routine. Whatever the explanation, the irony was impossible to ignore. This man spent 17 years trying to avoid capture. Yet he repeatedly walked into banks without covering his face. He was photographed again and again. He left behind witnesses, descriptions, vehicles, fingerprints of behavior, and a recognizable pattern. The FBI and Pennsylvania State Police hoped that someone watching the case would recognize him. Maybe someone had worked with him. Maybe someone knew him personally. Maybe someone noticed a man matching his description, suddenly possessing unexplained money. The authorities had his face. They had his habits. They had his clothing. They had his vehicles. They had his signature. But they didn't have his name. And after nearly 2 decades, that remained the greatest mystery of all. How could a man who allowed himself to be photographed so many times remain unidentified? The answer, investigators hoped, was somewhere in the memory of someone who had seen him before. Because the cameras had already done their job. They had captured the man. Now authorities needed someone to tell them who he was.